You're listening to the AAF Analyzed podcast with your hosts, Derek Hyde and Garrett Lay.
Hello and welcome. You are listening to AAF Analyze Week 5 Preview. As always, I'm Derek Hyde, and alongside me, Garrett Lay. But before we get started, do not forget, if you are listening on YouTube, to like and subscribe. If you're on SoundCloud, to like and give us a follow. And if you're on Apple Podcasts, subscribe and leave us a very nice review. And don't forget to follow us on Twitter at AAF Analyze to keep up with all the latest news and episode release announcements, and you might just learn a thing or two about the league itself.
Oh yeah, these reviews, these follows, everything is super important in getting our brand out there. So please, 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 it only takes a little while, even if it's just a simple, say, 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. That is amazing, and it does wonders for us. So thank you for your support and for listening.
No text necessary.
No. All right, before we get into the games, we just have a couple quick news tidbits about the league. So first thing is, I know we've been talking a lot about expansion teams. You might have seen some things about possible expansion locations, but it has been confirmed that the AAF will not be expanding next year. So you won't see any new teams, any new cities, anything like that next year. I'm almost positive they will be expanding in 2021, but as of now, 2020, we will have the same teams battling for the championship.
It's kind of weird because there were a lot of things coming out that said that they were almost confirmed that these are the locations that they're looking to expand to, and all of a sudden that all got shut down and they're like, yep, 8 teams, that's what we're sticking with, no plans yet.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't think it's anything to worry about, though. I'm sure there's a lot of logistics that go into putting a football team into a city, so it might even they might even really know where they want to expand to, but they just don't have the means necessary to do it quite yet, and I'm sure they want to do it as smoothly as possible, so that's going to take a little extra time, but no need to worry. We will get new teams, I'm almost positive, so there's that to look forward to in 2 years.
I feel like the XFL has something to do with it, because they're both trying to pull from that same player pool.
Yeah. Who knows how many players are going to be available when the XFL rolls around next year as well, so they'll just have to feel it out. But, like I said, nothing to worry about, and we can get excited for new teams 2 years from now. And our second little piece of news is, according to Greg Gabriel on Twitter, he's been an NFL scout for 30 years, Bill Polian says the NFL and the AAF are near agreement on allowing young NFL players under contract to play in the AAF. I think this is a really interesting thing that they might be trying here.
I think that's a fantastic thing, because I really want to see players that are already on practice squads that don't get game time in the normal NFL season to be able to come down, play in the season, and prove what they're worth to an NFL franchise that doesn't get to see them in a game because they're not on the 52-man roster. If anything, this will just make the players in the AAF better, because there's younger and more talented guys that'll be coming down that have already made a team, so to speak.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think it would be great for the league. I think it'd be great for both leagues, actually, because I think both the play in the NFL, as soon as a rookie got started, maybe not a rookie, but a 2 or 3 year rookie here, might improve. Like, could you imagine if Patrick Mahomes had gotten a shot in the AAF before he came up? Or as Steelers fans, it'd be nice to see, Mason Rudolph maybe start for an AAF team and get his feet under him at some pretty high-level football, so we could really see what we're going to be dealing with when he comes up, if he ends up being the quarterback that, say, the Steelers choose to replace Ben here.
Yeah,
so I think it'd be great for both leagues.
I don't know if they'd be that highly, sought about prospects. Patrick Mahomes is a first-round pick, and he was given the keys to the franchise before they even traded Alex Smith, so I think that's a bit over the top, but I feel like practice squad is definitely a way that can happen, and maybe lower end 52-man guys.
It might even change how important those 6th and 7th round draft picks are, because if those are the guys you end up sending to the AAF and they get a chance to really come into their own as football players, they might really, really improve and be able to make an immediate impact on your team when they come out of the AAF.
Yep.
I also think it's great for the AAF and marketing, because they might get some bigger name players who weren't busts like Trent Richardson was in the NFL. It'll be guys that you really get to see grow as players, which is super exciting. And it will once again reinforce the fact that the AAF and the NFL are not trying to compete. They're trying to work together to bring football to all of the fans who want it all season long. So I think it's a great idea. We'll have to see how it all pans out, what the contracts kind of look like and things like that. But I'm just interested. So that's something to keep an eye on.
Yep.
All right, time to actually start what this episode is really about, and that is the games for the upcoming weekend. We will begin with Orlando at Birmingham, Saturday, March 9th at 2 p.m., and this game is on TNT. This is one of the new TNT games that TNT decided to add, which is another great thing for the AAF because TNT is getting great viewership numbers, so they decided to pick up 2 more games. And if they're going to pick up a game, this is definitely one they wanted to pick up.
Yeah, TNT picked up 2 games, both of which were Apollo's games, which is really showing that TNT believes that the Apollos are the best team to put on television. Yeah. And yeah, Orlando at Birmingham, what a game to do it. This is the game that the entire AAF fan base has been waiting for. A powerhouse, an undefeated offense squaring off against the best defense in the AAF. And man, will this be a good one.
Absolutely.
Not to mention the major standings implications this game will have in the East. If the Apollos win this game, they give themselves a 2-game lead in the division halfway through the year, making them obvious favorites to host the Eastern Conference Championship. And if the Iron win this game, they even things up in the Eastern Conference, making it an absolute race to the finish in that second half. It'll be fun to watch.
Yeah. I think it's going to be a great game, particularly because you said the stakes that are really on the table here. If the Apollos win, it looks like they're going to run away with the Eastern Division because they've pretty much beaten the second best team in the AAF right now, at least considering based on their defense. So it'll be interesting, and this is really the Irons' fight for their life here. They need to prove to the rest of the league that they are truly the best defense in the NFL or AAF, and there's no better way to do that than beating the number 1 offense in the league right now. But Speaking of offense, my first key to the game is going to be the Birmingham offense. It's a no-brainer for a key to the game, and how this offense plays is going to determine the outcome of the game for sure. It looked actually pretty incompetent for most of the last game, and Luis Perez made some pretty ill-advised throws and is still not getting the ball in the end zone. Trent Richardson was stuffed, but he did still get his almost guaranteed 1-yard touchdown run for most of the game. Brandon Ross shined, and look for him to get more carries this game. He's their backup running back, but he led the team in carries last week. The offensive play calling, Perez and his wide receivers are all going to have to step up big time against this giant that is the Apollos this week.
Yeah, one of the things that I've been noticing from that Iron offense is they really need to get some diversity. The Iron have scored 7 offensive touchdowns through 4 weeks of play. And yep, that's right. All 7 of them have been Trent Richardson. And since Richardson's almost getting phased out of that offense, you really got to see someone else step up, put the offense in their hands, and do something themselves. This Apollos defense is just too talented to let one guy beat them. So if the Iron don't get some danger elsewhere on the field, definitely do not expect them to be an offensive threat in this game.
You know, speaking of what you said with letting one guy beat them, I think this is an excellent time for Brandon Ross to step onto the scene because if the Iron didn't have him, all the Apollos would know they have to do is stop Trent Richardson, and they win this game.
Yeah.
But now they have this great playmaker in Brandon Ross who might mix things up a little bit. He's a little more of a speed back than Trent Richardson is power, so they're going to have to watch for those outside runs and for Ross to break runs for big gains. So I think having Brandon Ross now on the Iron as well as Trent Richardson might make them a more balanced team than we've seen before.
Mm-hmm. Another thing is, on the other side of the ball for the Iron, can that Iron defense hold? As I stated in our last episode, the Iron seem to play their games relying almost entirely on their defense. The trend is that their defense holds the other team to a manageable total. They never give up more than 12 points. Actually, they've never given up more than 12 points. And their lackluster offense only has to score a small amount of points to take the lead and thus win the game. Only problem in that strategy is that the Apollos are the highest scoring offense in the league. They average 27 points a game. And the Iron defense is going to be in for a very tough challenge if they're trying to slow them down.
And I think the most important part of this challenge for the Iron defense is going to be their secondary against this very obviously best passing game in the AAF with the Apollos. The Apollos do have a solid running game, but their success rests on the arm of Garrett Gilbert and on the hands of their receivers. The Iron have a solid rush defense, but their success comes a lot from their ability to stifle opposing quarterbacks. The Iron are allowing only 164 yards and 0.3 touchdowns a game to quarterbacks.
Dang.
But Gilbert is throwing for 268 yards and 1.5 touchdowns per game. So those are huge differences in numbers. Both of them are the best in the league by a decent margin. So this is going to be a battle. One person's going to have to step up, whether it's Gilbert or that Iron secondary. We really don't know yet until the game starts. Also, one of the big things for the secondary is, will they pick off Gilbert for the first time this season and be able to force those turnovers that they have been so good at getting this season? The Apollos have the best turnover number in the AAF right now. They've only turned the ball over 3 times, and all of them have been fumbles. Now, the Iron are excellent at forcing fumbles. We saw this week in and week out with them ripping at the ball, but they need to get picks here, and Gilbert is not known for throwing picks, so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, it's really going to be a battle of who's going to be able to win this, that Birmingham defense or the Apollos offense, and I don't really know who to give the upper hand to because they've both been so dominant that I don't really know who to choose.
I do think something's interesting. If you watch the game from last week, the Iron had an incredible goal line stop against the Commanders. I think it was 6 rushes in a row they were able to stuff from the Commanders while they were pretty much on the 1-yard line. And it was the most impressive defensive stand I've seen all season from any team. So if the secondary bends but their rush defense doesn't break, I do think they should still be able to pull this game off if they can get their offense on par with their defense this game.
Yep, another thing that I'm looking at, though, is how fast does Orlando start? So Orlando, I've been looking for something that kind of critique them on because they've just looked almost perfect.
Yeah.
And Orlando's struggling to start fast on their first possession of the game. For 3 of the 4 times in their games, they've gone 3 and out on their opening drives, including this most recent game against the Stallions. The Apollos have been able to overcome slow starts like that, obviously, but momentum's going to be hard to get against an Iron defense, and if you give them a 3 and out on that first drive, don't you think they're just going to play right into Birmingham's hands?
Yeah, I'm totally on board with that because they might be able to get momentum, but with the Iron defense being as strong as it is, it might come far later than after the first possession. We saw Orlando being able to gain momentum as they go into the second half, but if they aren't able to get any breakage against this Iron defense, say not until like late in the third, early in the fourth, they might be too far behind to even be able to catch up, even with the excellent playmakers they have all across the offensive side of the ball. Yeah. So if they do get that fast start, I don't see how the Iron would be able to pull this one off because if their defense breaks, I just don't see their offense being able to keep pace with what Orlando can throw at them. I
can't see that either.
No, there's really no way. The Apollos are already the best offense in the league, and the Iron have not looked too sharp the past couple weeks. So unless something drastically changes, it's going to be all about who holds the momentum, probably going into the second half of this game.
Yeah.
All right. So players to watch for this week. I talked about him a little earlier, and my first player to watch is going to be Brandon Ross. The Iron running back broke out last week, leading the team in rushing yards and carries. If Perez can't navigate the Orlando secondary, which once again is one of the better ones in the league, particularly with Quinton Patton, he's going to be shadowed by that Keith Rieser guy who I talk about all the time because he's so excellent. This game's going to come down to Brandon Ross's play because not every touchdown can be a 1-yard Richardson slam, particularly when the Apollos know that's quite literally the only way that the Iron can score.
Yep, another one of the players that I want to look out for is Trent Richardson because despite his decrease in carries, he still has 100% of the Iron's offensive touchdown. So if the Iron manage to get within 3 yards of the end zone, watch Richardson score his 8th touchdown, but elsewhere, he's probably not going to be a big factor. So, quite frankly, neither of us are putting them at fantasy stars because we don't really see them blowing up.
No, I could see Richardson coming away with a touchdown, but I also see Ross getting almost all the yards. If Richardson has points, it's probably going to be from 1-yard touchdowns, and you don't know if they're going to be in any sort of position to make those runs. So I wouldn't start him in fantasy. Ross is also questionable, but yeah. Now onto the other side of the ball for the Iron, Jamar Summers. He's pretty much my player to watch every single week on the defense for the Iron, and this week is no different. He's been an excellent cornerback, just behind Keith Rieser as the highest-rated one by PFF. He's allowing only a 2.8 passer rating when targeted and has been smothering the other team's top receiver week in and week out. This week, he's going to take on possibly the best receiver in the AAF, which is Charles Johnson. This is going to be a matchup you're going to want to keep your eyes glued on the entire game, because what happens between these two excellent players probably will determine how many points are scored.
You think if Summers can lock up Johnson that he'll get like an NFL offer by the time the season ends?
If he proves that he can stick with the best receivers that the AAF has to offer, I wouldn't be surprised if we see him on an NFL practice squad next year, or even getting a chance at the starting roster for a team. I really like the guy. I think he's awesome.
Kevin Goldberg, listen up.
Yeah.
I'm also looking at Luis Perez. He's the starting quarterback for the Iron, and he started off his AAF career fairly strong. He didn't have a touchdown, but as of late, he has really fallen off. If he comes out of nowhere and plays like he did in his week 1, then maybe he'll just score a touchdown, and this could be a good game for the Iron. But quite frankly, just as winning is a habit, so is losing, and I think Luis Perez is going down a rabbit hole that's going to be hard to come out of.
Yeah, he's digging himself a hole. It's not looking great for him. I'm not sure who the Iron could start instead of him if things really start to go south in this game. I didn't really look into that. Probably should have, but oh well.
I didn't know any of their names.
I think if he doesn't pick it up, the Iron might be in some trouble. But who knows? We never know with some of these quarterbacks. Someone could step onto the stage and really make some big plays for them. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah.
My final player to watch for this game is going to be Jalen Marshall. Summers should be occupied with Charles Johnson most of this game, so Jalen Marshall is going to have a good game to give Garrett Gilbert an option to throw if Summers steps up and Johnson is locked down. Because while the entire Iron secondary is really excellent, Jamar Summers is certainly the strength. So if Jalen Marshall can put on a show and run some great routes and get open for Gilbert, I think that their passing game can still thrive.
Yep. Potential fantasy stars in this game, so people you might actually want to start. I really, personally, the quality of these teams, I'm pretty timid to start anyone in this game because really it could go either way, and I don't really see it being a high-scoring affair. So because of that, I'd say either defense or more specifically Orlando, is somebody that I would want to start on my team. I just have a gut feeling that this will be really low scoring, as I just said. And with a couple of turnovers, especially by the Iron, which of course will turn out well if you start either defense.
Yeah, I agree with that. And really the only player that I found on any offense that I thought would maybe be worthy of starting here, just because of the matchups and things like that, is Apollo's running back Dearness Johnson. If the Iron secondary plays like they're capable of, the Apollos are going to have to be handing the ball off a lot. And as everybody who plays fantasy knows, carries tend to be a really good thing for a running back because he's going to get you yards no matter what happens. So if the ball is in Dearness Johnson's hands, I think he can do some good things with it. The Iron rush defense is still really strong, but not as good as that secondary, and as long as he's touching the ball a lot, he should have a chance to get you some points, so I would not be afraid to start him.
Yep. Prediction for this game, I got the Apollos winning 19-12. As I just said, I really think that it'll be very low scoring, but when it matters most, the Apollos shine through. Going even deeper into this game, I'll just say that the Iron jump out to an early lead, and then the Apollos climb back to improve themselves to 5-0.
And I also agree here. I have the Apollos winning 17-14. This is going to be a fantastic defensive battle, but I don't think the Iron have it in them to score the 20 points they would need to take this game. I am going to say, though, if the Iron can score those 20 points, I do think they win this game. So if they end up scoring 20 or more, the Iron should be able to take this because I think their defense is too strong to give up. I know the Apollos score so many points, but I think their defense is too good to give up 20, but I just don't think their offense is good enough to get the 20 that they would need to win.
Interesting take.
Yeah, I'm an interesting guy.
Moving on to the later game on Saturday, Salt Lake goes to San Diego Saturday, March 9th at 8 p.m. This game will be on the one and only NFL Network. And Philip Nelson has been placed on IR, further ending his season with a fractured collarbone that he had suffered last week. And Mike Bercovici will once again be captaining the Fleet on Saturday. It was announced by Mike March that Bercovici will be the starter, but personally I'm just confused. Why is Mike March choosing Bercovici? In that game when Nelson went down, he chose Alex Ross to come off the bench and play, and he played well. So why is Bercovici the starter now?
Yeah, I'm not really sure. We'll talk about it a little bit in the keys of the game, but I do think that the Fleet should be starting Alex Ross. He's the one who has played in a game where he didn't get absolutely leveled by an opposing defensive player.
Yeah.
So I just saw better things from Alex Ross when he played. Bercovici hasn't really had an impressive game yet. So it is surprising. We'll have to see. Mike Martz is the head football coach. We're just analysts. So what do we know? But
we're not at every practice, but I would choose Alex Ross 10 times out of 10. I'm just confused.
Yeah, I also would take Ross. So it'll be interesting to see how Bercovici plays and how he bounces back from some of his poor performances. But who knows? So, keys to the game here. Speaking about the other team, that's the Stallions, my first key to the game is their passing game. The Fleet have the second best run defense in the league. They're allowing only 89.3 yards per game and 0.3 touchdowns. So, despite their excellent backfield, the Stallions are going to have to take advantage of the middle-of-the-road San Diego secondary here. DeMontre Pearsonell and Kenny Bell were almost non-existent last game, each only bringing in 2 catches for a little over 20 yards each, but they were playing an excellent secondary, and Woodrum had to deal with a pass rush that hit him 4 times, so I expect to see their production improve this week, and Woodrum production as well should improve.
I think it's funny how you bring up the Fleet's rushing defense, because the Stallions actually have the number 1 rushing defense in the league, so that'll be another key thing to watch out for, especially with the backup quarterback going in for San Diego.
Yeah, well, I actually do have as my next key to the game the Fleet ground attack. The Fleet have one of the best rushing attacks, and they just added a new weapon in Bishop Sankey. Sankey was one of the players that people were really excited to see play at the beginning of the season. He unfortunately went on IR, but he has been activated, and he should be playing in this game. This game they are in for is a challenge, though, as they're going up against, like you said, the number 1 rush defense in the AAF, which is not exactly the kind of game that Sankey's going to get a nice, easy chance to warm up his legs. There's also been a power shift with Terrell Watson taking a majority of carries over Gardner, so it will be interesting to see how Sankey further shakes things up and how they balance his running attack against the best defense in the league right now.
Yeah, I already loved watching the Fleet run the ball because that Gardner and Watson combo was just already fun to watch. And now we're adding Bishop Sankey into it. I'm just not sure there's a defense in the league that can slow down these backs and add a giant question mark at quarterback. And these guys are either destined to do great things or the opposing defenses are just already going to know that it'll be a run every single play.
Yeah.
And with that, rushing defenses are another thing that I'm looking at. We just talked about how exciting the Fleet rushing attack is, but let us not forget that Joel Buonio and Brandon Oliver are also very good. Both of these teams have frightening rushing attacks, but if there are defenses that won't be scared of these rushers, trust me, it's these two. You just talked about it, but these two defenses are the best of the best at defending the run. Salt Lake is number 1, San Diego number 2, and the only thing that separates them is 5 yards against per game. In my eyes, this should make the game a passing game, and that passing will be what determines the winner, a quality where Salt Lake has a very clear advantage in my mind.
Yeah, I think this game would end up being a lot more difficult to pick if Philip Nelson wasn't hurt and was starting, because I would almost put their 2 passing offenses pretty equal. But now that Nelson is hurt and we have Josh Woodrum, who really seems to be looking like one of the better quarterbacks in the league, raring to go against a middle-of-the-road, like I said earlier, San Diego secondary, I think that Salt Lake, like you said, definitely has the edge when it comes to the passing game.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of passing game, we'll hark back to Mike Bercovici here. He had a poor preseason performance and poor first game. He was sat in favor of course, Philip Nelson, who was showing promise, until unfortunately he goes down with that collarbone injury. Now Bercovici's getting his chance to become more than the quarterback who got absolutely leveled in Week 1. Mike Martz had extremely high praise for Bercovici after practice this week, calling the practice he had on Tuesday one of the best he has ever had from a quarterback who he's gotten to coach. So Apparently there's something going on with Bercovici that we just haven't seen in a game yet. Apparently. If the Fleet want to win this week, Bercovici is going to have to show us a side to his game we just haven't seen yet. Apparently Mike Martz sees it, so I'm excited to see what he's going to bring to the table.
Look, I don't know what Mike Martz sees in this guy, but I don't see anything more than a turnover machine. If we look at Berkovici's stats in week 1 in the preseason, where he got all of his playing time, he's thrown for 1 touchdown, 5 interceptions, and he's put the ball on the ground 6 different times. I just don't know what Mike Martz sees. It's just, I hate to rip on him, but the stats are not in his favor at all.
Yeah, I mean, I will not be opposed to being proved completely wrong and seeing Berkovici light it up on the field. But 1 touchdown, 11 total turnovers, that doesn't feel like a recipe for success.
Speaking of another thing, while you say he might light it up, I think it's more likely Berkovici gets lit up. Because the Fleet offensive line is just something I don't understand either. When Berkovici was the starter, he got clobbered in the pocket. He was sacked 6+ times in both of his appearances preseason in week 1, and he had 9 sacks against him in week 1. However, with Nelson under center, that number dropped to less than half of that. So if this trend continues into this game, Berkovici's going to be running for his life, and he might just get his head taken off just like week 1.
Yeah, it might be a matter of Berkovici might hold the ball longer than Nelson does. It also might be just the Fleet have figured out their offensive line, what they're doing there. So who knows, he could be provided that same great protection that Nelson has. Or like you said, they could play like a completely different O-line and get Berkovici absolutely creamed. Well, now onto the players to watch section for this game. And my player to watch is going to be Dontez Ford. The weakness of the Stallions team is their secondary, and after an excellent game last week, Ford is going to be confident going into this week. If he and Berkovici can establish a connection, whether it's during practice or maybe at the beginning of this game, he could be a very dangerous wide receiver and playmaker for the Fleet.
Yeah, Dontez Ford was just starting to come into his own with Philip Nelson. These last 2 weeks, his numbers had increased, but he really just hasn't been the same whenever Berkovici was playing, especially in the preseason, because Dontez Ford blew up when Alex Ross was throwing to him.
Yeah, the thing you're going to have to take into account is the fact that this entire Fleet team has totally matured since Berkovici first got a chance to throw the football. Like I was saying with the O-line, it might just be they're getting better. Same thing with his wide receivers. If his wide receivers play like they have in the past weeks, Berkovici should feel safe, and as long as he doesn't put the ball on the ground or into the hands of opposing DBs, the Fleet should give the Stallions a run for their money.
Hopefully.
But, yeah, the player that I think will be giving anyone the most run for their money is going to be one of my potential fantasy stars for the week, and that is Josh Woodrum. I really like this matchup. The Fleet have had their top pass rusher in DeMontre Moore. He's returning from injury, but the Stallions' O-line has been improving every week and is showing off that they're one of the best in the league. And if they provide protection for Josh, he might have his best game of the season this week.
Yeah, I really like Josh Woodrum, and he's got some great potential in the league, and that offense really is built for him, and he's got a lot of chance to succeed.
Mm-hmm.
One of the people I'm looking at is the Salt Lake defense, though. As we just talked about, Mike Berkovici is a turnover machine and doesn't score too often. So look for that Stallions defense to have a very good day in San Diego.
And someone who's going to try to make sure that the Stallions defense does not have a great day is Fleet wide receiver Nelson Spruce. Of course, Dontez Ford, the other Fleet receiver, is my player to watch. I see Spruce having a solid week as well. He had 2 TDs when they played the Commanders and the statistically worst secondary in the league, so it makes sense that he would have a solid game against the Stallions secondary, who right now is sitting at 2nd worst in the league.
Okay. Another receiver for the Fleet that I'm looking at is tight end Gavin Escobar. The Fleet throw to their tight ends more than any other team in the league, and from what I remember, Berkovici doesn't really throw the ball very deep down the field, which makes Escobar a very good safe start in my eyes.
Yeah, the Fleet definitely use the tight ends more than anyone else. Like, I almost don't want to start a tight end sometimes in fantasy just because other teams really don't throw to them. They occasionally get in the end zone, but Gavin Escobar is far and above looking like he is the best tight end in the AAF right now on a team that loves to utilize him. So I absolutely agree. Start Gavin Escobar. Now on to predictions for this game. My prediction, I have Salt Lake winning 23-15. This Stallions team is one that we really see on the come up, and I see this as the game where they finally show us what they're made of. They will take this game riding the arm of Josh Woodrum, no doubt.
Yep. Salt Lake 20, San Diego 9 for me. The Stallions team has been getting better and better with each week. Woodrum is under center. And the Fleet have also been noticeably worse when Berkovici is the starter. I'm sorry, but I just analyzed these trends, and that just makes the game a clear Salt Lake victory in my mind. I've got 9 points for San Diego because that was how much they scored the last time Berkovici started.
Classic us, analyzing the AAF on AAF Analyzed. It's our job. Now, the next game, starting off Sunday, we have another really exciting game, Memphis at Atlanta, March 10th at 4 p.m. This game will be on CBS Sports Network.
Yep. What a great game this will be. I really am looking forward to this one, maybe more than the other ones.
Yeah.
Both of these teams started off slow, but as of late, they have now found the way that they can be successful. And just as they figured this out, they play each other. It's a match made in heaven.
It really is.
I really believe that this will be a fantastic game that people will sleep on and probably not watch, which is very sad to me.
Yeah, you got to watch this game. These are two teams who really seem to figure out how to play football finally. And there's nothing more exciting than seeing two teams who just got a chance to get their first win. One of them has to pick up a loss. So these guys will be playing their hearts out this week.
They have to be. Let's move on to those keys to the game. We just talked about how hot they're coming in, both of them getting their first wins of the year last week. How about keeping the momentum rolling? Both these teams won their first games of the season last week, so that they now have the key to success. So the trick is to maintain that. The Legends are coming off of a 454-yard and 25-point performance against the Hotshots, far and away their best game of the season. And the Express finally have a QB with a quality start. 18 of 25 for 174 yards and a touchdown last week, and a defense which forced 4 turnovers. If they keep this momentum, they'll be hard to push over. Again, it's just a match made in heaven, and I cannot wait to watch this game.
Yeah, one of the main reasons why I can't wait to watch, too, is this Mettenberger versus Murray showdown that we're going to see. Two quarterbacks who are looking to turn their teams around, get to duke it out this week. So exciting to watch. Both of them show that they can win, but in my opinion, Murray did a much better job of convincing me that he can win consistently. Mettenberger needs to connect on those deep balls he was underthrowing last week so that Atlanta has to worry about the downfield ball just as much as the short pass. Murray, on the other hand, was solid on his deep throws and proved he can do some serious damage with his legs after leading the Legends with 54 rushing yards. The Express defense is going to have to be ready to defend every part of the field, or they are going to be in trouble against Mr. Aaron Murray.
Yeah, I really like watching Garrett Gilbert of the Apollos, but Aaron Murray last week against the Hotshots, I thought put on one of the best shows of the league so far.
Yeah.
Is that crazy to say?
No, I don't think it's crazy at all. I think what he did for that Legends team in that game was spectacular, turning that team around. Now, of course, we talked about Zamprize, is that his name? Kevin? Their new offensive coordinator?
Yeah,
starts with a Z.
like
We'll call him Kevin Z for now. But we can attribute a lot of that success to him as well. But, of course, he must be looking on at Aaron Murray. So proud right now because he was able to execute whatever he called really, really well. So right now, Murray just seems like the quarterback to me who's going to be able to carry his team to win more often.
Yeah.
But the Express do have something that Atlanta doesn't, and that is a rushing game that has been pretty solid this season. The Legends show that their pass defense is definitely their defense's strength, and they didn't break until late in the game and dominated the air most of the time against the Hotshots, who have a great passing game. I don't see Mettenberger being able to do much more than Wolford did, particularly if Legend safety Ed Reynolds Jr. is healthy enough to play next to his teammate Tyson Graham Jr., who is the current AAF leader in tackles. The Express run game has an opportunity to shine this week, and if they are going to win, they're going to have to shine. If Beatty and Stacy will be getting their carries, and a big run could give the Express the opportunity to swing momentum in their favor and actually be able to take this game.
Yeah, that Express running game was very lackluster in their game against the Fleet last week. But now that they played the Legends, who might I remind you are dead last in rushing yards against per game at 120 yards against, I feel like the Express are destined to break out this week, at least on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And that Express offense needs to be even better, though, for that to happen. Last week, I was very adamant that the Express were lucky to win that game against the Fleet. And last week, I was very adamant that the Express were lucky to win that game against the Fleet. And despite them putting up 26 points, the Express offense only gained 225 yards. And the defense gave the offense fantastic field positioning off of all 4 of those turnovers, something that the offense cannot rely on going forward. As Zach Mettenberger said, we have to move the ball more and help those guys out. Right now, we're asking entirely too much of our defense, staying on the field and expecting a stop. So even Zach Mettenberger's seeing how much they're relying on the defense.
Yeah, I'm totally in agreement with Zach here. If that defense doesn't force those 4 turnovers, the Express simply do not win this game. So the offense is going to have to show their defense that they can get the job done too, or I see this game slipping out of their hands very quickly. Speaking of the other team's running game, Atlanta, a competent running game came out of nowhere last week for the team, and so they pretty much have to do what they did last week. And this balanced offense will be able to keep the Memphis defense off balance enough, just enough to get your offense some points and win this game. So that's going to be a big key there if Atlanta can show that they can still run the ball after it coming out of nowhere last week.
Yeah, real quick reminder, too. These 2 teams have the best kickers in the league so far. Austin McGinnis of the Express, Younghoe Koo of the Atlanta Legends. I just think we're not giving enough credit to special teams sometimes, and man, these kickers are good.
Yeah, both these guys are perfect. Of course, McGinnis has only played 1 game, but he went 4 for 4 with some really tough field goals in tough situations. And of course, Younghoe is 8 for 8. He has been Mr. Consistency this year and is looking excellent. But other players to watch who aren't kickers this game. I have the Express linebackers. DeMarcus Gates and Drew Jackson have both been stellar for the Express this year, which is relatively unsurprising considering who their head coach is. But they're going to have their hands full this week, and will have to play excellent coverage and make sure they keep Murray from being able to use his legs to get first downs.
He is a bit more than 1.
He has 2, actually, and they're very dangerous. And speaking of another player on the field who has 2 legs, that would be Legends running back Denard Robinson. The Atlanta backfield is a confusing mess for anyone trying to pick who to start in fantasy, so probably don't do that. Don't try to figure that out, but I'll just tell you to watch for the one who found the end zone last week. Brandon Radcliffe had an awesome hurdle for a first down last game, but Denard has some unique speed that could easily lead him to having a very big game this week.
You definitely don't pull the trigger on any of these Legends running back unless you have roster spots for all of them, because I don't even know who's going to be the starter or get the most carries week to week.
No, we do know a starter, though, and that will be my potential fantasy star of this game, and that is Zach Stacy. He has had back-to-back disappointing weeks, but this is the week Stacy gets back on track, I almost promise you. The Legends have the statistically worst running defense in the league, like you said, allowing 120 yards and 1.5 touchdowns to running backs this season, so I would not be surprised if Stacy finally finds his way into the end zone again.
I like how you said I almost promise you, because your promises involving the Legends don't normally go through.
Yeah, my promises have not been great, but I almost promised this time, so.
My potential fantasy star is Aaron Murray. After an outstanding performance against the Hotshots last week, Murray is coming into this game confident, and rightfully so. In this game, he now plays the Express defense that gives up over 200 yards per game and 1.3 touchdowns through the air. If you haven't picked him up yet and he's still on the waiver wire, pick up Aaron Murray because you might want to be starting him.
All right. And to wrap up this game, we'll go into the predictions. Derek, you talked about how good these teams' kickers are, and I think this game will be decided by a field goal. Ooh. I see Atlanta winning this game 23-20 against the Express. Both defenses stepped up last week, and this is going to be a hard-fought game, but I think the team with the better quarterback wins it. And if he plays like he did last week, the better quarterback is Aaron Murray.
I feel like you're giving the game to the better kicker as well in Younghoe Koo.
Yeah, that's true.
I have to agree, though. I'm thinking the game will be a little bit more high-scoring, though, as both teams have figured out the offense. I got Memphis 23, Atlanta 28. This game will certainly be a good one, but the trends just seem to favor Atlanta the slightest bit more. The Atlanta passing defense is slightly better than Memphis's. I feel like their quarterback is slightly better, and they have home field advantage. Just give me the Legends in this game.
Yeah. We're liking the Legends a lot now, which is nice to see since I picked them to win it all at the beginning of the season. That looked pretty hopeless going through those first 3 weeks. But, hey, who knows? Things could turn around.
I feel like it'll be very exciting to watch the Legends at home too, because remember how they were rooting for Aaron Murray and he wasn't even playing.
I'm sure he's going to get quite the crowd acceptance when he runs out of that tunnel, because people wanted him and now they got him.
And they were right.
Finally, we have our last game of the weekend. Once again, it's probably going to be a good one. I think this week might have some of the best matchups we've seen all year so far. And this will be the San Antonio Commanders at the Arizona Hotshots, Sunday, March 10th at 8 p.m. This game will be on NFL Network.
Yep. Personally, I feel like this could be the most disappointing game of the bunch, but it's prime time Sunday night. I'm certainly going to be watching, and I think it'll be a good one, because these are two teams that really have been on the downhill slope lately. San Antonio really hasn't picked up the pace since their week one victory against the Fleet, and since then they've steadily slid down to 1-3, or they're 2-2 now, my bad.
Yeah.
And Arizona is started 2-0. They were looking like the best team in the league, and then they also slid as of late. It's two teams trying to get back on track, and I feel like that's the best way to do it, is going up against another team in a similar situation.
Yeah, I think saying the similar situation is a great thing. I think every one of these games has the potential to be great because each of them offers something special in the matchup. The first game, Birmingham and the Paulos, it's best offense against best defense. Second game, Salt Lake at San Diego. That's two teams who are trying to get some momentum to make a push for the postseason. The third game with Memphis and Atlanta, two teams who just found their first win. They're trying to get a second. And, of course, this last game, two teams who have been slipping and need to find a way to get back to their winning ways. So that's why I think this has the potential to be a really good week of football. And how is it going to be a good week of football? Well, here are keys to the game. The San Antonio pass defense has to be disruptive against Wolford. They had a solid week last week and only gave up 202 yards and picked off Perez twice, but the Wolford and Ross connection is a whole different monster. Someone's going to have to step up and be able to cover Rashad Ross, or the excellent Commanders' defensive line is going to have to take advantage of a Hotshots O-line still dealing with injury and get in Wolford's face to stop what might become a lethal air attack.
That's going to be really hard, though, because San Antonio's defense is statistically the worst pass defense in the league. They give up 258 yards in the air and at least one touchdown a game.
Yeah, that's why I mentioned the defensive line thing. If they can they don't have the cornerbacks, I think, to keep up with Ross and some of those other Hotshots receivers, but I do think if they can be in the face of Wolford and make him roll out of the pocket, they might be able to shut down the passing game without solid play from their corners.
That would make sense. They did have 9 sacks in week 1, which is nothing to laugh at.
No. My second key to the game is that Arizona needs to score first. Arizona has been trending downward these past 2 weeks and needs some sort of spark. What could be better than a bomb to Rashad Ross for a touchdown to get some swagger back on the sideline? Literally nothing. Scoring first will take pressure off the Hotshots on both sides of the ball, and as long as they play fast and loose, the Arizona team of weeks past should return this game.
Yeah, but the only way Arizona returns back to their normal form is that they figure out the third down conversions, because they are atrocious at that. 12 of 45 in the season, a mere 27%. This isn't good enough to beat anybody in the league, let alone a team that's sliding down the rankings like the Commanders are. So either Arizona needs to figure out how to play two-down football and go 75 yards down the field at just first and second down, or they need to figure out what they're doing wrong on third down so that they can score more points.
Yeah, we talk about it literally every week because I think it's the biggest thing that's holding this Arizona team back. Just convert those third downs and you're going to win these games.
Has to be.
You just have to figure it out.
Another thing that's really been holding down Arizona, though, is John Wolford. He needs to get back on track. Through those first 2 weeks of play, Wolford had 468 yards and 6 touchdowns. And in these past 2 weeks of play, he's got 312 yards and just 2 TDs. I'm not saying he needs to go out and throw a perfect game like week 1 with 4 touchdowns, but at least a 2-touchdown performance would be great in both him and the team to get back on track.
Yeah.
Another thing that I've been really starting to notice is the Hotshots appear to play well when Wolford has. In his first 2 weeks, he was lighting it up, and the team was 2-0. And since then, Wolford cooled off, and so did the team, losing 2 games straight in disappointing fashion.
Speaking of another quarterback in this game who needs to show us he can do something, Logan Woodside, he needs to tell us that he has something special and can continue to be the starter for this Commanders team. We know that both of these teams can run the ball, but only one team has shown they have a quarterback who can get the job done. Woodside has excellent receivers and needs to take advantage of them because right now they feel underused and kind of like wasted talent on this offense. If Woodside could find a way to uncork it against a solid Arizona secondary, the Commanders absolutely have a shot at winning this game.
The Commanders really struggle against really good pass defenses, though, because they struggled against the Fleet, if I recall, too, and I'm pretty sure they're up there with one of the best pass defenses in the league.
Yeah, that's why one of my players to watch for this game is Mikhail McKay. He's not a fantasy star for me simply because the Hotshots do have that second-best pass defense according to the numbers, though they were shredded by Aaron Murray last week, so I wouldn't necessarily be afraid to start him if I have him on my team already. If he can get some separation to help out Woodside, I could see him making a huge impact on the Commanders' offense that has been relatively one-dimensional so far this season.
Yeah, he's a really good player. He's one of the best wide receivers in the league, so I feel like it'll be really tough to not start him, don't you think?
Mm-hmm. No, I do. That's why I'm actually personally starting him, mainly because I have to, because he's only the second wide receiver I have. But he's a player who I really do want to start every week, except for last week when I called to pass on him, and that was the right decision.
All right.
But, yeah, so don't be afraid to start him. I would not be surprised if he's at least the best performing Commanders wide receiver this week. But do watch out as well, because this Hotshots team has a good secondary.
If you're doing weekly fantasy, maybe shy away from him, but if he's on your team for a season, definitely go for him.
Yeah.
But how about my man Trey Williams? He's been impressive, and he has had a lot of production on very few carries. And I don't know if I have the guts to start him personally yet, but if you haven't picked him up yet for your season-long league, you're making a mistake. Trey Williams is only getting better, and as they start to realize how good Trey Williams is, Kenneth Farrow and him will start splitting the carries, and you'll have a pretty good running back on your hands with Williams.
Yeah, he'd be a great buy low in weekly fantasy leagues as well, so he looks excellent. And we're talking about fantasy a lot in that last section, so let's continue it with our potential fantasy stars for this game.
Yeah, how about Kenneth Farrow, though? Trey Williams hasn't gotten the carries yet to take away from Kenneth Farrow, and Farrow's coming off of a game last week where he had 30 carries and 142 yards against an impressive Iron defense, to say the least. The Hotshots defense give up on average of 105.5 yards against on the ground, which was nearly double what Birmingham had been averaging before Farrow came to town. So if you need a running back, Kenneth Farrow absolutely has to be the way to go.
I would also go ahead and start Jarrell Presley if you're in need of a running back. He's another running back coming off of a huge week. He had 110 yards last week. He definitely has the opportunity to stay as hot as he was. The Commanders allow the fourth most points to running backs, and he has gotten by far the most carries out of anyone in the Hotshots backfield. At least last week he had 14 compared to everyone else's 3 carries. So start him. He looks good. He's getting those carries that he wasn't getting at the beginning of the season, and he's coming off of a big performance.
Yeah, it's kind of weird with Jarrell Presley because he started off with a lot of carries, and then they went down, and now they're back on the rise. Very strange sort of trend that's going on there.
Yeah, it might be because the team hasn't been playing as well, so they decided to maybe go back to Presley because they did win those first 2 games when he was getting a majority of the carries. So I think that might be what they're doing. They're trying out some new things on offense to try to get that spark I was talking about back into this team.
Okay. In my final start of this game, John Wolford. Wolford is just destined to break out of this funk any game now, and this should be the game that it happens. The Commanders give up the most passing yards against in the league at 258 yards against per game and a touchdown. And John Wolford threw for 4 touchdowns in week 1 against an already good secondary. So why not start Wolford? Because he should be the best this week.
All right, and speaking of what is Wolford going to do for the Arizona team, I think he's going to lead them to a win. My prediction for this game is Arizona 25, San Antonio 15. I just see that Arizona passing game breaking out this week against a secondary that has been the weakest in the league so far. San Antonio will get some points on their board thanks to Kenneth Farrow and Trey Williams, but I don't think it's going to be enough, and Arizona should take this game.
I think it's kind of bold of you to make this game separated by 11 points. I think that's a lot. So I'm going to go with a bit closer, Arizona 16, San Antonio 12. I really feel like this will be a great game, but because the game is in Arizona, I'm going to give the edge to Arizona. And with John Wolford coming back, Terrell Presley on the rise, I just feel like this offense is hotter than the Commanders is, and I feel like their talent is just going to take them the slightest bit over the top and win this game for them.
All right, that wraps up our game previews for this week. Like we've said, this is going to be a great week of AAF football, so make sure you tune in to all of those games. Now, on to the last part of the show, which is our fantasy football talk. I'll go ahead and start it off here with my plug for the week, and that is Stallions quarterback Josh Woodrum. I think he's been having solid weeks so far, but nothing that stands out on the fantasy stat sheet, and I think that's all going to change this week. He's been making great throws. He hasn't been turning the ball over, and this just feels like the week where their running game might get shut down, and he might have to air the ball out a lot. That's going to hedge towards him improving, as well as his wide receivers putting up big numbers. So Josh Woodrum is my plug for the week.
Okay, I have 2 plugs this week. Number 1 for me is the Salt Lake defense. Mike Bercovici, again, is a turnover machine, and he is playing Salt Lake, and he doesn't score very much either. So not to mention that the last game he started, the Fleet gave up a staggering 9 sacks. So look for the Stallions defense to have a very good day in San Diego. And if you're looking for a weekly defense to start, definitely make it the Stallions. And number 2 for me is Zach Stacy. This is the week Stacy should return to his dominant form. The Legends have the statistically worst rushing defense in the league, allowing 120 yards against and 1.5 touchdowns to running backs this season. Got to go with Zach Stacy if you need a back.
Yeah, I'm definitely on board with Stacy. I personally will be starting him this week, and I'm very excited to see him blow up again.
All right.
Now onto the passes for the week. My pass for the week is literally any Fleet running back. Bishop Sankey's coming in to mix things up, and the Fleet playing the best run defense in the AAF. I'd steer clear of any part of the Fleet backfield this week just because we don't know who's going to be getting the majority of the carries, and if they do, if they're going to even be able to take them anywhere with that menacing run defense of the Stallions.
Yep, my pass is Luis Perez. I've been hoping good things for him for the past 4 weeks, but I'm just tired of waiting. He started off his AAF career very strong, but as of late, he's fallen off. He has thrown 3 interceptions in his last 2 games. Would put him against a very strong Apollo's defense, and I wouldn't touch this start with a 10-foot pole.
All right.
Sorry.
And players that you're going to want to start, though, our power players are up next. My power player is wide receiver Rashad Ross. He's John Wolford's favorite target every single week, and this week he gets to play a secondary who gives up at least 1 touchdown to wide receivers every single game. Rashad has 1 touchdown, at least a touchdown every week. He has 1 week with 2, and is averaging 20 fantasy points per week, meaning he literally could have been a power player any week of the season, but if I'm going to call him a power player, it's going to be this week against the Commanders.
Yeah, my power player was a very close race between the Stallions defense and the guy I'm choosing right now, but I didn't want to make my power player an entire defensive entity, so I went with Arizona quarterback John Wolford. I'm going with a bold play this week. I'm choosing a player that's been a bit down on his numbers these past 2 weeks, but as I just said a little bit ago, this is the week Wolford breaks out into his normal form again. The Commanders give up the most passing yards against in the league at 258, and they average a touchdown against per game, they're one of only 3 teams that do that through the air. The Hotshots have home field advantage too, so come on, John Wolford, this is the week you gotta start him.
All right, there you have it, folks. That is everything you need to know about the upcoming Week 5 of the AAF. We're very excited for it. Thank you so much for listening once again. We really appreciate the support as always. Don't forget, Monday we will have the game recaps. We'll see where we got things right, where we got things wrong, and who came out on top. Once again, don't forget to follow us on Twitter, and we really, really appreciate those reviews. Thank you so much once again, and peace out and play football.
Thank you for listening to the AAF Analyzed podcast. Follow the show on Twitter at AAF Analyzed, and feel free to contact the show to have your questions featured on a future episode. And don't forget to check out the show on all other platforms such as iTunes, SoundCloud, and YouTube.